Good morning. Go and turn to James chapter 3. I'm going to spend most of our time this morning in James 3. While you're doing that, it's so good to be here with you guys. I appreciate all of you, and I'm just excited about today, even though a lot of us are a little upset that we lost a little bit of sleep, but it's okay because you'll get that back. I'll let you have it this afternoon. How about that? Someone mentioned that the clock back there is an hour behind, so does that mean that I get an extra hour here? I think we're okay with that, right? Anyways, let's look at James chapter 3. We have been talking about how we need to have genuine faith, and that is what the book of James is all about. Having faith, and having a faith in such a way that it is more than just something that we think, it's more than just a belief. It's something that takes an active part in our life. It changes the way we do things, and it changes the way we address issues, how we live our life in general. Now, today's lesson from chapter 3 is going to be about speaking with wisdom. Being wise about how we use our words, being wise about how we use our tongue, the things that we say, turns out are pretty important, actually. And here's some homework that you can do at some point. If you go through the book of James, and every time you see a word that has to do with something we do with our tongue, something that we say, that we speak, underline that. And then see how many times that it's addressed. It's actually all the way throughout. In chapter 1, one of the first things that he says is, if we don't have wisdom, you know what we should do? Ask God for it. That's something we can do with our tongue. Actually, at the end of chapter 1, verse 26, if anyone thinks himself to be religious and yet does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this man's religion is worthless. And so we discussed that back a couple months ago, I guess. And we're going to see this amplified in chapter 3. He's going to really focus on that. And just as you go through James, pay attention to that. What we say really matters. And what we say has a big impact on us and others as well. I do want to look at James chapter 3, though. We're going to start in verse 1. James says, "Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we shall incur a stricter judgment." So this is a good way to start this conversation, I guess, because this is how he does it. But he says here that don't let a lot of you become teachers. Now, this is kind of weird. Isn't that a weird thing to say? Is it bad to be a teacher? I would hope not. I would really, really hope not. For a lot of reasons, hopefully some that are obvious. But there are several passages in the Bible that talks about the importance of teaching. You might think about Hebrews 5 when the Hebrew writer says something along the lines of, hey, by this point in your development, you should already be teachers. So I think there's a sense in which we are all expected as Christians to grow into a teaching role, being able to teach others. So if that is true, then why in the world is James opening up this chapter by saying, actually, no, you shouldn't be teachers? What's he saying there? Well, he says, let not many of you be teachers, because knowing as such we will incur a stricter judgment. The things that we say are going to be under scrutiny a lot, and you have to really understand that before you begin the teaching process. And here's another thing to think about. What kind of interactions did Jesus have with the Pharisees? I mean, it was pretty negative a lot of times, right? Because what were they doing? They wanted to be seen by men. They wanted to, and one passage talks about how they wanted to sit in the seat of Moses. They wanted to be the ones that are up front teaching people, and they were looking for some kind of prestige in that role of what they were doing. And we can be like that sometimes too. We could desire any kind of prestige, honor, glory that goes along with teaching, rather than wanting to teach God's word for His sake. And I know some of you might not relate to that at all, because do you know what one of the most common fears among people today is? Constantly, consistently, the number one fear is fear of public speaking. So getting up front would probably freak a lot of people out and not want to do that. But some people do have this idea in their mind that there's some kind of prestige just about being up front and all eyes on them. And we have to watch out for that. We have to make sure that we're not letting that go to our heads, that we have this humility about us to understand that, because teaching is a very important task, for one, but it's a task that comes with a lot of responsibility, too. And think about this. There's a lot of temptation of seeking attention, but there's also some other dangers in that as well. What are the things that we need to think about? Before I teach someone, what do I have to be aware of? Well, we need to make sure that we're not teaching the wrong thing. Is it possible that we could say something that would be wrong, and someone would believe that wrong thing, and they are condemned because they believe what I said? Yeah, that's very possible. So we have to be sure that I am going to teach something, and I'm only going to teach what God says, because if I'm teaching anything else, it's not going to help. A false teacher can mislead a lot of people, and it's really easy for that to happen. Especially, you get people who are just like really good at speaking. Like, I wouldn't say me good with words. But you have somebody that's just like really charismatic, and you just really enjoy what they say and how they say it. And you can see how people get misled because someone is just, they're so smooth talking. Like, it's just the way they say it. It's just so great. We got to watch out for that, because we can be misled pretty easily. So don't be teaching the wrong thing. Another thing that I think could be related to this is being divisive. Have you ever known someone who's teaching who gets kind of, and I might even include arrogance with this, arrogant about their way of looking at things, and they want to stir up trouble. They want to say certain things in such a way that's going to get a response out of people. And, there are issues, there are things that we could talk about just in spirituality in general that we're going to have some different views and outlooks and opinions on. And if we become so divisive that you have to see things my way, that's not a good use of teaching. Maybe even a little bit of rudeness, like cutting people off, just feeling some kind of anger and pettiness when someone is disagreeing with you. It might even lead to slander of others. You got to watch what you say about other people, because that's a dangerous thing to do as well. Don't want to talk down about anyone. There's a really interesting verse in the book of Jude, and in Jude verse 16, I want to show you this. Jude, just keep turning pages before you get to Revelation. You'll get there. But Jude verse 16 says, "These are grumblers, finding fault, following after their own lust. They speak arrogantly, flattering people for the sake of gaining an advantage." You know that's possible? That people can use their words to try to flatter people to gain some kind of advantage, either like monetarily or just as a position or whatever. If we can flatter people enough, then maybe they'll give us some stuff. They'll take care of us or whatever. But here's something else that we need to consider. And the last thing I'll put on this list, leaving things out. Is there a danger in sometimes not wanting to say everything that you actually need to say? This chapter, in James 3, there's a lot that's said about words that we use that can hurt people, cut them down, and all of those sorts of things. But it's just as bad if we don't say something that we should say. And there can be that tendency of, well, I really want to soft pedal this issue. I don't want to really talk about this out loud. Like, it's embarrassing to say, and I don't want to say that. Or this is going to turn people against me if they know where I stand on this issue. Or it's not going to be a popular message, so people won't want to listen. Well, we can't let that be something that stands in the way either. Ultimately, teaching is kind of a dangerous thing. It says that we will incur a stricter judgment. So before you start teaching, you have to realize what I say will be under scrutiny, and God is going to hold me accountable for the words that I say. So don't just jump into it with the idea of, oh, this is going to be so great, and people are going to look at me, and it's going to be awesome. No, you got to pay attention to what you're actually saying. But he goes on from there. It's not just teaching that people might struggle with. Just in general, look at verse 2. "For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. So that statement there, we all stumble in many ways. Do you agree with that? It's in the Bible, so you have to. But yes, I think I would agree with that too. Now, look, I want you to compare this, though, with something that we saw a couple lessons ago. Go back to chapter 2 and look at verse 10. Because we were talking in chapter 2 about this idea of what if I'm perfect in every area, but there's only one thing I struggle with. So chapter 2, verse 10, whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles in one point, he has become guilty of all. It's funny, he uses the word stumble there to say, even if you only stumble in one thing, you still stumbled. You're still a lawbreaker. But in chapter 3, we have a more realistic picture of this. It's like, actually, if you say you only struggle in one thing, you're lying, because actually, chapter 3, verse 2, we all stumble in many ways. And it is true. There's a plant there. It is true that if you didn't, I accidentally hit it. We all have our different strengths, and we all have our different weaknesses. Some people struggle with anger, or malice, or just using our words negatively, or maybe lust, or greed, or slander, or all of these different things. Alcohol, our temper, honesty. We all struggle with different things, and that's true. But you know what? This verse said everybody. You know what everybody struggles with? The things that they say. We all stumble in many ways, but we all struggle with what we say. And, I mean, honestly, you think about our words in general. Our words can have a lot of impact on people. They can cut people down. They can change people's lives for good or bad. They can build up, but they can tear down pretty easily. It's kind of like performing brain surgery. Like, do you think it's a big deal if you're performing brain surgery if you slip just a little bit? That could be a big deal. We don't want to do that. And so the tongue is sort of the same way. Like, we might look at this and it's like, but it's just a small thing. Like, words are words. What does it matter? Like, why is it important? Like, to think about this. How do words work? Like, we have air coming from our lungs that pass over these folded muscle tissue things, and they just vibrate, and we make sounds into the air. Like, what's the big deal? If I use those vibrations to make a certain frequency and say certain things versus others, why is this wrong but this is right? Like, it's just sounds. That's all words are. Yeah. Have you ever been hurt by words? Yeah. We all know that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. You want to try that? Like, it's much easier to fix the injuries that come from sticks and stones than it is. There's no Band-Aid that can go on hurt feelings with words. Sometimes you probably remember words that people have used against you to hurt you from years ago. You probably still have those scars in your mind because those can hurt so much. Our words do make an impact, and they can bring devastation. No, I'll say this too as a personal note. When I was younger, I was an idiot, and I guess I still am. But I had a big problem with using words, especially when I was in grade school, middle school, high school, even college. Just using words. We kind of looked at it in our friend group as a competition of who could be the wittiest, the quickest with an insult. And if you can insult the other person and make everybody laugh, that was just peak. That was the pinnacle of success right there. And we hounded each other, and it was what I would say at the time is it was all in good fun. But was it really? Were there do you think that there were some times there where we would be making fun of each other, and then someone would say something to me and it actually hurt? But you know what I couldn't do? I couldn't let them know that it actually hurt. Because one, what are they going to do? Do it even harder. But two, I can't just open up like that because you're weak. You can't handle it. You dish it, but you can't take it. And I tell you, that was very destructive. And if we look at life like that, you don't know what's happening in someone else's mind. And sometimes, I'll tell you this too, I eventually became like the butt of everybody's joke because I was just easy to pick on. And I'm not even going to like point out the obvious reasons why I would be easy to pick on. But like the things that people would say, I would just like laugh it off and be like, ha ha ha. You know how I actually felt? Really bad. But I couldn't tell them about it. And I held on to that for so long. Words matter. Even when you think that the other person knows that you're joking. Or even when I'm just kidding around. We got to be careful with that a lot. Now, he does use 3 analogies here. Let's read the next couple verses. Verse 3, now, if we put bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct the entire body as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are very great and are driven by strong winds, they're directed by a very small rudder, wherever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a fire is set aflame by such a small. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. What do all of those analogies have in common? He actually tells us what it is. Those are all small things that can impact a great thing. You think about even like the size of our tongue compared to our bodies. Like it's such a small percentage of your overall like body mass and size and all of that. But that tongue can affect a lot, and it could change people's perspective of you. Think about the bits in the horse's mouth. I think this is interesting that when he's talking about the words that we use in our speech, he's talking about something that goes in the mouth of another animal. And you think about what that can do to a horse. How big's a horse? There's pretty big ones. And you can control that horse just because of a small little thing that you put in their mouth. I mean, you could take it this way, you can go this way, you can go like, yee, and go faster. Is that how it works? Is that what you do? Showed my ignorance there. But like, you can like go and you can make it like stop. You can do a whole lot with a horse just with this small little thing. Same thing with like the ship and the rudder. I don't know a whole lot about that. I'm going to change that analogy a little. Think about like a car with a steering wheel. It's sort of a similar thing. And even think about like a big tractor trailer, like semi-truck, 18-wheeler. How many tons are in one of those? A lot. And how do you control that? The steering wheel. And if you have like power steering and all that, which everything does now, like it's pretty simple to move that huge amount of weight and force. Like you can do that with just such a small thing. And the fire, the forest fire thing, just a small spark. How many times have you heard that somebody had like tossed a cigarette out the window, or they left a campfire unattended, or there was just like, I mean, we're under like a burn ban or something right now. And it's just conditions, you could just have a little spark that just and lands on foliage of some sort, and it just ignites such a large forest. And it's just a small fire, just a small little thing. Now take this analogy of the fire, the forest that's set on fire by this small little spark, and look at verse 6. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body, and sets on fire the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell. Okay, now thinking about that, those are some pretty intense things that he says there. And I don't know that we really consider our words that deeply. But he says at the end of that verse that where does that fire come from? It comes from hell itself. And you think about why that's true. When Jesus was interacting with the Jews and he talked to them about lying, where did he say that lying originated? With the father of lies, with Satan. And so really, you think about it, from the very beginning, how did Satan tempt Eve? Used his words. He was a smooth-talking serpent. And he convinced her that she wanted to be more important than God, have more knowledge than God, or to be like God, rather. And so you think about that situation. The words that we say, and by the way, not every word comes straight from hell. You think about, there's a lot of good uses of words. Look at Proverbs and how many times we can use our words in a good way and spread wisdom and build people up. But how many times do we see the destructive force behind words? And you ever wonder why words hurt so much? Maybe if we think about the origin of why those words hurt so much. Because our words, they can come straight from Satan himself. And that's not a good place to be. Now, we think about the destructive power of fire. Fire can be good in some aspects, but right now we're looking at the bad stuff. It's very destructive. And our words can break down someone's character, the relationships, families, whatever it is. You could be working on building a good relationship for years and years and years and tear it all down with just one sentence. That's all it takes. And rebuilding from that's tough because it's so destructive. It's so there's a lot of power there, and it's not. How long does it take to build like a good reputation, like to have good character? Long time. How long does it take to ruin that completely? Not long at all. Just a couple words will do it. And even like iniquity. Like just think about the sinful ways that we use our words. Blasphemy, lying, flattery, defaming people, inciting people to rebellion, bitterness, division, criticism, boasting. All of those things are things that we use our tongues for. And this list never ends. I mean, it continues to go on and on and on. And we got to think. The words that I use, the way that I talk to people, there are two options, two origins of those words. Either those words come from God or those words come from Satan. There's no in between. So either I'm using words to build up or I'm using words to tear down. So we got to be aware of that. And then he goes on to talk about in verse 7, let's read this. For every species of beast and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race. But no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. So think about this. How many things have been tamed? I mean, like there's like lion tamers, and you've probably seen like elephants. You can even train an elephant, and they like can do stuff in shows and stuff. That elephant can just like run you down so easily. But they've been tamed, and they've been trained. And we can do that with a lot of different types of things. But no one can tame the tongue. If we can't tame something, how should we treat it? Like if you have like a wild animal, you can stay away from it, that's true. You can't really do that with your tongue. Like it's there. So what do you do with it? If you have something that cannot be tamed, well, you better at least cage it. Put it in a cage. You got to have it controlled somehow. You got to keep it restrained. So a wild animal in a cage, at least it can't get out and get you. We have to really think about our tongue as this wild animal that we do not have the power to tame. So I always have to be constantly vigilant. I have to be on guard, making sure that I'm not saying something that I shouldn't say. And ultimately, I think he does help us out a little bit here. No one can tame the tongue except for God. Think about that. Mankind, we don't have the ability to do that, but God does. And this is something that we need to put ourselves in submission to God. In obedience to God, he can help us through all that. Now, he's given us so many instructions in different places about how he helps us to do his will, and he wants us to do the right thing. And so if he's called us to this, we need to trust in him to help us with that. And that's part of, by the way, what obedient faith looks like. Genuine faith is putting our trust in God. So we have to understand we need God's help with that. So I think praying, asking God to help, and just continually working on that would be helpful. I wonder if this is true about you. I know it definitely is of me. But more than likely, we regret more words that we've said rather than deeds that we've done. You probably, like, what are the things you think about, like, when you're trying to go to sleep or you're laying in bed or, whatever, you're by yourself, and the things that haunt you? Probably like a conversation you had and you said something and you know it wasn't right, and you just keep replaying that in your head. Now, sometimes, we all do dumb stuff with our bodies too, like smacking and hitting and all of that. And you probably regret some of those actions. But the things that we use our tongue for, that's more than likely the things that are hurtful, harmful, that we just, once a word's out there, you can't take it back. It's gone forever. Because of this, I want us to consider something here. Because this is true of us, how many things have I said that I regret? A lot. How many things have you said that you regret? Probably a lot. I think we need to take this knowledge and apply it how we look at other people. I think we need to be patient with others, because that's really what we're hoping that people do for us, right? Because if I say something and I come back later and I'm like, look, I didn't mean that, what do I hope that they do? I hope that they say, I forgive you. I understand. But you know what's hard to do sometimes? That. Because I look at things that I've said, yeah, I feel bad for it, but I can make excuses. And I could say, well, I know why I did this. I know why I said that. I was really angry. You did this to me. Or I was just joking. Like, just get over it. But if you really think about it, how do we feel when someone does the same thing to us? And then they say, oh, I was having a bad day. What do you say to that? Everybody has bad days. Why are you acting like that? It's just, I didn't really mean it. It just came, well, if you said it, you must have mean it. Or if someone says, oh, I was just joking. Like, are you? Like, that sounded like really hurtful. We automatically assume the worst in others and hope that they see the best in us. I hope that we can look at this and understand this is a problem, literally, James said, for everybody. Everybody struggles with this. Be patient with others when they struggle with their tongue too. We have to understand that we're all in the same boat there. The tongue is full of deadly poison. There's so much danger there. And we need to help each other with this, not harm each other with this. But just like Satan, think about a serpent. Serpent is full of deadly poison. This is where all of this originated. It makes sense that our tongue is looked at in the same way. But let's read the rest of this section. Verse 9. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be this way. Does a fountain send out from the same opening both fresh and bitter water? Can a fig tree, my brethren, produce olives, or a vine produce figs? Nor can salt water produce fresh. So think about this, the inconsistency that we have with our tongue. And he makes this analogy of offending God by attacking his image. Think about this. How many times do we get offended because someone else blasphemes the name of God or speaks evil of God? Like, I know a lot of times if I hear someone saying something that is making fun of God in some way, or is just blasphemous, it's just, the terrible things that people say about God, I think almost all of us get this sense of, how could you say that? And we get so angry. No, we really do, and for good reasons too. Like, we shouldn't let people blaspheme the name of God and do all of those things. That's not a good thing. But when we let that offend us so much, but then we turn right around and then curse people, or we use our tongue in sinful ways against people who are made in his image, what are we really showing to God? I think we're showing that I don't really love you like I say I do. If someone comes up to me and says, Jason, I love you so much. You're so great. I love being around you. But I hate your kids. And I'm like, what? You can't do that. You can't say that because, those are my kids. You can't talk about them and think that you're going to be okay with me, have a good relationship. Same thing with God. We can't say, God, I praise you, I honor you, I love you, and give all these blessings, and then turn around and then curse the very ones that are made in God's image. That is not consistent. That's just like what he says here, the illustrations he used. The fountain with bitter and sweet water. You can't have both. The fig tree can't produce olives, and salt water can't produce fresh. It's not something that's compatible. You can't have both coming from that. Because Do you remember what Jesus said is the thing that really defiles us? It's not the outward stuff. It's stuff that comes from within. It's what's in your heart that defiles you. But do you know what has a straight connection from your heart to the outside world? Your tongue. Your heart bone's connected to your tongue bone. Or something like that. It seems like the quickest way for someone to know what's in your heart is for you to open your mouth. And there's a lot of truth to that. We can't say, oh, God knows I have a good heart. I just like tearing everybody else down. It's like, do you? Do you really have a good heart? Because it's not showing it. And again, this goes back to the whole theme of the book of James. That genuine faith is something that is more than just what we think. It's what we do. And a big way that we see what we do is by the words that we use. That's how we present ourselves to the world around us. And so the call here is to think about our words. Just really be mindful of those. And understand the words that I say make a difference. They matter. And I want to make sure that I'm using good words, not hurtful words. And that includes what I say to people, like how I'm talking to people individually. But it also affects how I talk about other people as well. And our words can really do a lot to build us up, or they can do a lot to tear us down. So there's no place for just the irritated ramblings and cutting people down just because I'm angry. There's no room for that. We need to look at how we can build others up, how we can show love, how we can encourage. And that's ultimately something, it's a lesson that we all need. And so if we're honest with ourselves, remember back in chapter 1, one of the first verses that I talked about, chapter 1, verse 26, he talked about, if anyone thinks himself to be religious and yet does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this man's religion is worthless. We could be here in the pews every time the door's open. We can take the Lord's Supper perfectly every time. We can contribute. We can sing. We can do all of these things. But if the way that I use my tongue is not consistent with a heart that's in God and reflects His image, then it's worthless. And ultimately, that verse, chapter 1, verse 26, says that we're deceiving ourselves. We might think that we're doing the right things. We might think that we are following along and just serving God with all that we have. But if our actions don't show that, if our words don't show that, then it's not true about us. So today, I want you to think about the words that I've used. And think about just like in the past week. Has my speech reflected my character in Christ? Have the things that I've said been in line with a heart that's transformed by the Lord? And if it's not, we need to work on that. We need to ask God to help us. We need forgiveness for the sins that we've committed, and we need to recommit ourselves to the Lord. Now, it might be this morning that you aren't a Christian, that you've never actually called on the Lord to be saved in the way that He has asked you to. And we're ready to help you do that this morning. Remember, faith is more than just belief. Belief is important. We have to believe that Jesus is the Lord, that He is risen from the dead. And we need to be able to repent of our lifestyle, of our sins, turn to the Lord, give ourselves to Him fully, confess with our mouths that Jesus is Lord, that He is the Lord of our life, and be baptized to have our sins washed away. Now, if we've done that and we are Christians, then we need to realize my life needs to reflect Christ living in me. And if that's not the case, we need to make that right. And so if there's anything you need to do to obey the Lord, please come forward as we stand and sing.